Nicole and I, we love to travel. Our last international holiday was in 2015, so that seems like a very long time ago. It was before children, so we had a lot more flexibility and could do whatever we wanted. But in 2015, we went to Europe for about 3 weeks or so. We went there under the disguise of the Boundless Conference, but really we were going to go and see Europe and to spend some time with my parents who were living in London at the time. My parents now live in New York. Great time to be living in America, I'm sure. And so originally our plan was that in January of this year, 2020, we would go over to America, go to New York, spend a few weeks in New York, and then maybe drive up to Canada for a few weeks. That was the plan. But towards the middle of last year, Nora really started to get into Disney. She loves Mickey and Minnie Mouse. And when we watch Disney movies together, I'm sure you all know the screen that comes up with the Disney castle. She said to me the other week that she wants to go and live there, but she knows it's not real, that it's just a movie. So our plans had changed. We decided that we wanted to blow Nora's mind, and so we would plan to go to Disneyland in America. So that would mean that we would need to save a little bit more, and so our plan changed to we would go over to America in January, February of 2021. And you all know what happened. COVID hit, borders closed, and with that, so did our plans. And so we missed this great opportunity to go to America, and now we don't know when we're going to be able to do that. I think we all know that familiar feeling of missed opportunities, don't we? One of the ones I hate the most is the feeling of when you just miss a green light in traffic. Some of you might have stood outside Aldi on a Saturday morning waiting to buy a Dyson vacuum cleaner for $27, and then a staff member comes out to you and says, "I'm sorry, we've just sold the last one." There's the one that got away, missed opportunities to travel, missed opportunities to see family perhaps for the last time. I think we all know that familiar feeling of a missed opportunity. And sometimes it feels like there's nothing worse than a missed opportunity, when you can feel that something is so close that you can almost reach out and touch it, and then at the last second have it taken away from you. If you were here with us last week, you would know that our sermon for today, the passage is connected to the one that we looked at last week. We're looking at two passages, both from Matthew 25. And really, they're supposed to be looked at together. Last week, we focused on the fact that we are watching and we are waiting for Jesus to return. And so we need to be ready. We need to be prepared. But it was also touched on last week that we can't be unceasingly, consciously waiting for Jesus to return. That we can't just live our lives with our eyes in the sky, waiting for the trumpets to sound. That we need to go about doing the normal things of life. But when we read these two passages together from Matthew 25, we see that while we're waiting, we're working. While we're watching, we're serving. Jesus starts off this parable from Matthew 25 in verse 14 when he says, "Again, it'll be like a man," so it being the kingdom of God and Jesus' return. "It'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another he gave 2 bags, and another 1 bag, each according to his abilities. Then he went on his journey." It's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? This man, this wealthy man, is going away. And so he gathers 3 of his servants together and he gives them some of his wealth. To one he gives 5 bags of gold, to another he gives 2, and to the last one he gives 1. And basically the idea is this: take this money that I have given you, use it, work it, invest it, get a return on it, and give it all back to me. Prove that you are faithful servants. What stands out here to me in this passage is that he gave to each according to their abilities. And that's true of life, isn't it? We're all created differently. We are all individual. We are all unique. Each of us has been given different gifts, skills, talents, capacities, capabilities. Some have had privileges that others haven't had. Some are limited physically, mentally, emotionally. Some people have PhDs in theology and in philosophy and divinity, and others have a very basic, rudimentary understanding of the gospel. But what God is saying here is that he has given us these gifts, and he expects us to use them. Whether we are 5 gold coins people or whether we're 1 gold coin people, God has given each of us different gifts, skills, talents, and we are to use them. We need to make the most of our opportunities to gain for Christ and for his kingdom. He continues by saying, the man who received 5 bags of gold went at once, put his money to work, and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags gained 2 more. Now this is a risk for the servant, isn't it? I mean, he could invest it and lose everything, and then he's really in trouble. Or he could invest it and gain, but he's gaining for his master. He's not gaining for himself, he's gaining for his master. We all have opportunities in our lives where we can either play it safe and do whatever we want, or we can choose to risk. To risk our friends, our reputations, or sometimes even our lives for the sake of Christ. Should I respond to that inner urge to become a missionary or become a social worker and give up my high-paying corporate job? Should I open up my house on a Tuesday night for a small group, or should I watch TV? Should I make the choice to involve myself in the life of my neighbour and her problems instead of going to the movies with my family? It's about making the most of every opportunity that we are given. We see here that these servants, they loved their master and they wanted to faithfully serve him, and so they put all of their time, their effort, their minds to making sure that they gained, not for themselves, but gained for their master, gained for Christ. And so for the servant that had 5 bags of coin, he gained 5 more. The one that had 2 bags gained 2 more. Not everybody has the same opportunities. Not everyone has been given the same gifts and talents. But the key is this: be responsible with what you're given. Make the most of the opportunities that come your way. Because what we're going to see in this story is the repercussions if we don't. Jesus continues by saying, but the man who received 1 bag went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Now that's not strange. It might seem strange to us, but it wasn't strange in their day because that is the way they protected their money. That was putting money under the mattress. What they would do is they'd go to a field, they'd find a tree, they'd mark off a certain number of paces in a particular direction, then they would dig and bury what was valuable to them. That's how they kept it safe. But what this guy did is he missed his opportunity. He deliberately missed his opportunity. Now, I'm not saying that one bag people are unfaithful. What I am saying is whether you're a 5 gold coin person or a 1 gold coin person, we all have the same job, and that is to be responsible with what God has given us. Our ministry coach, he tells of a story of a gentleman who's a part of their church, came to Christ about 3 or 4 years ago. Very, very basic understanding of the gospel, just his own experiences. The week after he became a Christian, he brought 2 people to faith. Their church in that time, in the last 3 or 4 years, has doubled in size. He's brought 40, 50 people to Jesus. Not just to church, but actually into the kingdom of God. This is a 1 coin person who's made a 40 times return on his investment. But we also know of people who have gone to church week after week after week, maybe for their entire lives. They parade around as if they're faithful servants of God, but have never brought one person to Jesus. 0% return on investment. They act as if they're faithful servants. They parade around as if they're faithful servants, but really they've buried all of their opportunities in the ground. And we're going to see what happens when you do that. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. The master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The first man had gained 100% return on his investment. So he took hold of the opportunities and he used them to gain for Christ. He put first God's kingdom and God's righteousness. And so the master's response is, well done, good and faithful servant. The Lord sets him up in charge of many things. And when you consider the amazing wealth and riches of God, that's quite a lot, isn't it? But it gets even better than that because he says to him, enter into the happiness, the joy of the master. What is this joy? In Hebrew 12 it says that Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. It is the joy of accomplishment. It's the joy of achieving through blood, sweat and tears. It's the joy that comes knowing that you're pleasing God, that you're pleasing the Master. And this is not a fleeting joy that just kind of comes and goes. This is an eternal joy. And the more opportunities you take, the more you risk for the sake of Christ, the more you experience that joy. And so Jesus continues with the story of the final accounts. The man who with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Now, this man has done just as well as the first servant did. He gained 100% return on his investment. Yes, he didn't have the same giftings, the same opportunities that the first one had, but he was responsible, he was a good steward of what God has given them, and he took the opportunities. He was equally as sincere, equally as devoted, and so the master says to him also, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. What I love about that is that between the first servant and the second servant, there is not one syllable difference in the reward. It is exactly the same. Yes, the first servant gained more and had more opportunities than the second servant, but their reward is the same. And isn't that just a beautiful picture of the amazing mercy and the justice of God in his character? But one servant remains. In verse 24. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? Well then, you should have put money on deposit at the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This servant gained nothing because he risked nothing. He saw no increase because there was no investment. He had this one great opportunity, this one golden opportunity to serve, this one opportunity to prove himself to be a faithful servant, and he buried it in the ground. We kind of get a picture of the opportunity that this servant has been given by the outcome of the story. This guy's one opportunity was to give himself to Christ, to be redeemed, to show himself to be a true servant of God. But he hid it in the ground and buried it. He forgot about it so that he could go on and live his own life. His life ended up valuing nothing, and so he would be left with nothing. And when the master returns, he has a little speech prepared. He basically says to the master, "You are unreasonable. You expect other people to do your dirty work and you get all the benefits. If I risk this money and lose it, you can condemn me as a criminal. And if I risk this and gain, you get it all. I see nothing from this." And so I was afraid to risk it. So I buried it. I protected it. Here it is. We're even. What's interesting here is that the master doesn't even try to defend his character. I don't think that he feels like he has to. He responds to him by saying, "You knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed." It's a question, isn't it? He's not confirming that this is what he believes, but he's saying, if this is what you believe, then let me judge you by that standard. If this is what you really believe of me, then do you really expect that I would be happy with you just taking my money and burying it in the ground? I mean, at least you could have taken it to the bank and I could have got a little bit of interest. I mean, it's harder to dig a hole than it is to take it to the bank. You could have done that. But of course, this man had no intention of being the servant that he pretended to be. I mean, no matter what his opinion of the master, whether it's true or not, the responsibility of a servant is to do what the master tells him to do. At its core, fundamentally, that is what a servant is. Someone who does what the master requires. And so this servant, he's a fake, he's a hypocrite, he's pretending to be a servant of God when he's not. The sad part is that he didn't understand what an amazing opportunity this was. Because yes, he might have risked it and lost, but he could have gained, just like the other two servants did. If he had taken hold of that opportunity, he himself would have gained, just like the other two. One coin, one bag of coins is given to all of us as we are drawn to God. It's up to us to take the risk by actually trusting in God, putting our faith in God's grace and attaining this eternal hope. And if we take that risk, we gain. And as we gain more, we risk more and take hold of more opportunities for the sake of Christ. So what is the message from Jesus in this story? Step out, risk, live courageously. All of us have been given our own bags of coins, different gifts, skills, talents, capacities, capabilities, and we need to use them. We need to take hold of every opportunity to risk for the sake of Christ. We never want to regret a missed opportunity to work for the kingdom of God. As Paul says, to live is Christ. Surrender to his cause. That is the way to watch for his return, to wait for his return, to be ready, to be prepared. Having risked everything to become a Christian, risk and risk again so that his kingdom can grow in this space, in our communities. Live dangerously. Or perhaps a better way to say that is to love dangerously. Because to love like Christ is always a risk. But with it comes an amazing reward. Sometimes it feels like there's nothing worse than a missed opportunity. I think everybody has regrets about missed opportunities in their personal lives. But perhaps this morning you've been reminded of missed opportunities in your past, and perhaps you feel guilty about that. And if that's the case this morning, what I would encourage you to do is to, yes, think about it, learn from it, but then seek the Lord's forgiveness and leave it with Him. Use it as a launching point to step forward. Perhaps this morning, through the lesson, you've been thinking about the opportunities that are currently before you. Opportunities to risk for the sake of Christ. And if that's you this morning, step out. Live dangerously. Risk it. If that is you, what I would encourage you to do is I'd encourage you to share it with somebody. To be accountable. Because it's really easy to chicken out in the moment. So risk it. Live courageously. Step out for the sake of Christ. Maybe some of you who are listening today, you're struggling to see the opportunities. What I would encourage you to do is to come before God in prayer and ask Him to show you the opportunities that are currently before you, or perhaps to give you opportunities to risk. Because as Paul says, to live is Christ, to die is gain. God bless you. We'll see you next week.